was quite a few years ago when Dr. John Coyle was here. I think it was after he was stepped down as department chair, but it was his idea, because at that point our college was starting to develop research centers. And being a younger faculty member, he kind of took me under his wing, and another faculty member, Dr. Alan Stenger, Dr. Skip Grenoble, all of us, would get into a car, take a ride to a potential corporate sponsor and spend the day trying to convince them to give us, back then it was $5,000. And we got zero funding from the college, unlike all of the other centers. So we had to pretty much do it on our own. And that was a lot of fun. And so that's kind of where my involvement, I like to think that I was involved in the very start of it, but it wasn't my idea, but did help Dr. Coyle and the rest of the faculty with generating funds and things like that to get her going. I kind of stopped doing my own research a long time ago. Right now I supervise Schreier honors theses, which is kind of what my research is. I am also an associate editor on 3 different academic journals. And so I said, my career now is looking at evaluating, supervising the research of others. I guess best way to describe it is you got to be type A, but you also have to be type B. You got to have an attention to detail, but you also have to see the big picture. You got to be very analytic, but you also have to be very creative at the same time. I mean, you think about some of the, what we saw during the pandemic when there was a port congestion. That was more of the analytics side. We just couldn't get containers through. So what did companies like Amazon and Walmart and Home Depot do? They went out and leased their own ships. That's the creative part, right? How are we going to fix this? So we have to have a little bit of everything, and you got to understand the business. We probably in supply chain span more of a business than any other functional area, because we span from procure to deliver. If you're in Amazon, you don't make anything, but you certainly do fulfill orders. And so, we do that. So it's kind of, like I said, you have to be a little bit of everything, jack of all trades, if you will, because you never know what kind of situation you're going to get into. I changed the name again because I first day of class, I always go over with my class exactly what supply chain is and what logistics is, because how can I put this? Everybody talks about supply chain, but I don't think anybody really knows what it is. And so, the good thing about it is that there was a consultant came up with that name quite a few years ago, that if you use the word logistics, everybody thought that it was an evil because we were a cost center. So we called it something real fancy, and everybody said, "Oh, that sounds good." Doesn't sound evil at all. It's the same thing. But I said, I'd like to see a little bit more of a definition, because I define supply chain as the network of individuals and companies and things that is used and coordinated to get something done. Logistics to me is not a noun. Some companies have what they call logistics departments that have, transportation, warehousing in it, but logistics is a verb. I mean, how many times have you ever used logistics in a sentence that said something like, we got to coordinate the logistics of this event? It's a verb. And that's what I was trained in, is trade-offs and looking at all of the different players and things necessary to get something done. So I would change a little bit more about getting our definitions right, so we're consistent across the discipline. Presence on campus if possible, right, to be here. Especially for those companies that don't have what I call an established brand out there, where the students say, "Oh yeah, I know that company." But really, whether it's a Zoom, whether it's being here in class, whether it's interacting with the student organizations, whatever it might be, is to be here so they get to know you, because this way they get to know the company as the people, and not just the company name. And as we discussed during the podcast, I said the people are the most important thing in the company. It's the culture. This way they get an idea of what the culture is going to be like, who they might be working for or working with. And I think that's a big key in their decision-making process.